Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so very much for dropping in. To anyone who's new to this channel is dedicated to the teachings of a very, well, at least to my heart, a very special spiritual teacher named Bruno Groening. You can find out more about him on the website that's linked in the chat box and below this video. So, I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. I certainly have. And I've got some things I am really excited to share about. The first one being the idea of leaving the results in God's hands. So it's kind of a cliche, right? To the results are up to God, or put things in God's hands. It's certainly a cliche that I have heard many times, but I recently had the good fortune to study with a spiritual teacher who actually had really, in her own life, had dived very deep into this idea or this philosophy, and taught it actually to other people. And I feel very blessed by it. And I've been really sitting with, well, how does this integrate with Bruno's teachings? And it's exactly. So specifically on the topic of healing. Many of us come to Bruno because we're seeking healing. And I was one of those people. And healings are beautiful. And Bruno Groening said something very, very interesting about healing. And I've said it many times, and I'll say it again. Bruno said, I ask you not to determine for yourself the time in which a healing occurs. Now, that's a very interesting statement. In essence, Bruno's saying, don't try and determine how long the healing is going to take. As I've shared many times, some healings happen with no effort instantaneously. Someone goes and watches the documentary film about Bruno, and they have a healing. The most amazing one I've heard is someone ended up on a Bruno Groening website. They don't even know how they got there, and they had a healing. The former country leader in the Bruno Groening circle of friends, he went to an introductory meeting and he had 3 healings just for attending a meeting. An introductory meeting? Such stories they happen. First of all, they happen. I've met people. I met someone who had a healing at the documentary film, and he fell asleep. I mean, talk about effortless healing. So that's one spectrum, right, of healings. The other spectrum is a healing that can take years, or the other extreme being years or even decades of tuning in and work and growth and interchange. So it's really important to not have an idea in our mind how short or how long a healing is going to take. And that's not easy to do. It's easy to say, right? It's easy to say, okay, I'm going to give the burden away. I'm going to trust that nothing is incurable, nothing is impossible. I'm going to, put the burden in Bruno and God's hands and tune in and really separate myself from the idea that I have it, and then just trust and keep doing that until the healing occurs. That it can happen in a moment, and it can take time, and everything in between. It can happen in a month, in a day, or a week, or a month, or a year, or, as I said, a decade, or sometimes even longer. So there's this idea of doing our best and leaving the results up to God. So I'm really inspired by this because as I've shared many times, when I first found Bruno, I had a lot of healings in a very short time period. Rapid, miraculous, life-saving, life-changing. Then the next healing that I had, it took about, I believe it started right when I found Bruno, but the next significant healing from like the time I found Bruno took a solid year and a half. And since then, sometimes ones happen instantly and sometimes they take time. And so, based on my initial experience, I had this idea like, oh, all healings are just going to happen like that. And so I've been in this process of learning to practice what I preach, that, Bruno pointed out, don't set the time for yourself, and also to trust, as Bruno said, that only God knows the timing in which a healing would be best for someone's spiritual growth. So, so I'm really have this vision of, people often say, how do you experience healing through the teachings of Bruno Groening? And that's kind of easy to say. You do this, and this, right? There's kind of a set of steps that you do. But then there's the inner steps, which is a little harder, which is to give the burden away, to trust, and then to just keep doing your best and leaving the results up to God. To trust that it's in God's hands, and when the time is right, the healing will happen, and not a moment before. That's the hard part, the surrendering. So thank you so much for dropping by, and I wish everyone beautiful striving. As Bruno said, if you want to experience the divine, you have to strive for it. So striving, that's a very vigorous word, to strive for spiritual growth and for healing, and then simultaneously to surrender, to trust that the burden is now in God and Bruno's hands, and the healing will happen when the time is right. Thank you so much for dropping by.